All right, so we got to know from the very beginning. How do we avoid this in totality from the very beginning? Because, you know, things happen.
Yeah.
You know, we're meant to being out here in the world and, you know, we have fun. But how do we avoid this happening, child custody, all this stuff happening?
Well, fundamentally, let's talk about this. Like, child custody, if it goes wrong, it's always going to go wrong in the very beginning. It can also go wrong in the end, but it starts out bad. And this is where men don't know anything, and they're not educated, and we get like all this different stuff from different angles. But where it screws up is somebody's first appearance with either mediation or mediation with the attorney general or in front of a judge. And nobody educates you on this because you expect to go into court just going, man, I'm a good dad. I'm a good dad. I'm like, here's me. Here's who I am. Yeah. You don't know how to address the judge. You don't know what motions are. You don't know any of this stuff. And so you just go in having faith in like the American justice system.
Oh boy.
Which is when... Like, it goes from being a good dad and your friends and family going like, man, you know, you just tell them the truth and all this sort of stuff. And you basically get your ass handed to you. And the tragedy is so bad because, you know, what you guys are talking about, like man, up your game, like be powerful, all this sort of stuff. When you're a guy that all your life did like the best man by like American standards or Western world standards, all this sort of stuff. You care about your kids. You give everything for it. You sacrifice like your work, your life, your health, all this stuff for your kids, for your family, and your soon-to-be ex or your baby mama, your wife. It depends if you're divorced or in custody or whatever, different things. But you do everything for that. The best man with the best heart who cares for everything that we're supposed to care about in our culture, like good families, is going to fight for that. And he gets fucked.
Yeah.
And women, you know, man, women are beautiful. Women, though, when they get into that mode, turn super territorial. Men do too. And they'll pull all the stops. And once they realize they have some sort of advantage, and again, you're walking into a court system which is not going to favor men immediately, but it doesn't have to go that way, you get hit hard. And you're alone. You don't want to talk about it. There's all this like stuff about men's mental health and like, let's do this and that. Let's be strong and powerful. But when you are devastated because you can't see your kids and you're used to, maybe you worked the whole time and the mother tucked them in at night and made food for them, but you were still around. And all of a sudden you have no rights. All of a sudden you have nothing. Man, you start contemplating in some normal ways, things like vengeance, harming yourself, harming others, disappearing, and you take the high road as a man and you try and be strong, and you're ashamed of how weak you feel. You beg back for the relationship, all the simp stuff that we hear about, but those are traits of a strong man put in a horrible situation where he's forced and humiliated to stay weak. And it's the toughest thing. So when guys come to me, so basically what I do is I work with guys through their whole legal case, and we help with the mental side, the legal side. We have a whole group. It's like 24/7 support system. And guys are like, man, you know, why, you know, she did this, da-da-da-da. But then they're like, but I'll do anything. I'll do anything to get her back because it's better for my kids. I'll do whatever it is. I don't give a fuck. And you sit there and you see this guy going down a road that statistically by far is not going to work and is going to fuck him worse. But he has some of the most noble traits of a guy. And so we have this crazy conflict from the advice he gets from like the man side of things. The PC feminist culture is just fucked with it because like every man is just dangerous and violent. And if he can't see his kids, it's not as bad as a mom who can't see her kids. It's this horrible, horrible thing. So, man, how do we avoid it? On what levels? I mean, on Owen's level, what he's talking about is he goes, man, get people to wear condoms. And one thing I will say, if you're a man and you're with women, okay, I have 4 kids. One was through a relationship that was committed and all that sort of stuff. And the other kids were, or 2 kids from a committed relationship. The other 2 kids were from kind of like riff-raffing around and all that sort of stuff. If you're a man and you're sexually active and you have the ability to do that, I think you're better off in our world. There's a whole bunch of people that talk about the different moral values and whatnot, but people have different roads and all this sort of stuff. But if you're a man and you're good with women, this is going to happen. This is going to happen in some way. And so Owen was like, hammer down on the condoms, help men get saved in this way. But the fact of the matter is, and you should, you know, be safe, all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't happen. And a lot of guys don't use condoms. Women lie about birth control. Women might make a mistake about birth control, all this sort of stuff. And pregnancies happen, man. In the moment when you get that call, you're like, fuck, my life is over. And the female's all fired up, you know? So if it's a casual situation, she's like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to care for me? It just switched, right? It just switched from like, yeah, baby, da-da-da-da, and whatever shit's going on to like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I talk to my friends and I have power. And her friends probably don't really know. But if she goes to the courts and realizes that power, it gets fucking bad. And everybody catches wise. So if this happens in a casual setting and you, man, I'll share actually like a pretty brutal story, but my buddy, this is way back when, and he actually passed away, but he was a pimp. And he said, look, man, if you knock a chick up, now I'm not suggesting to do this, but this will portray the mentality. And he says, if you knock a chick up, you got 3 months. And at the time, termination and these types of things, which is a touchy subject, were more available in the U.S. He goes, you got 3 months to make your move and to make your play. And you have a choice in this because you're the one going to be paying child support. You're going to be the one going through the pain. You're going to be the one responsible for that child. And you have a say. So you have to make your play and you need to be hard. And he went hard, like as somebody who and stuff would say. And he said, and then after that, you got another 6 months to make up with her. And I'm like, man, you can't give that advice. That's too fucked up. You know, nobody's going to be able to, nobody has the mental, like, I don't know, just harshness to pull that off. And especially when you're just the guy going out and having fun. And the thing is that mentality for a woman, she physiologically goes through a change. I mean, man, it's beautiful. It's an amazing thing. But it is, I want security, I want safety, and I'm going to fight for my life for this. Like, it's in my body, and I'm going to make it work. And you as a guy are like, oh, shit, you know, this throws everything off. Like, am I going to be single? Am I going to be married? What am I going to do? And then fatherhood stuff kicks in. It gets all crazy. And then even afterwards, if there's a miscarriage or something like that, there'll be crazy tension a guy can't relate with, and all sorts of, like, if you fuck that up as a guy, if you well, I mean, depends on what you call fucking up, but if you piss her off, like, man, reputations, like everything you read about, like when people are talking about like borderline women or narcissistic personality disorder, like whether they had it or not, that shit becomes much more probable, and they'll go after your reputation, and it's like
we know.
No pun intended. Or just get a vasectomy.
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing. Like, kids aren't bad. Like, fatherhood is an amazing thing, and motherhood is an amazing thing.
Shout out to Rollo.
But how that gets manipulated in our culture, and how it gets exploited, and what women become and even men become when they don't know what to do, or they take advantage or manipulate, is one of the most fucked up things. And it causes generational pain and trauma. It fucks up the kids. It causes, like, there's something called parental alienation, which is one of the most devastating things. Like, the results of alienating one parent from the other, like, you're a bad dad or you're a bad mom and you shouldn't like your dad because they abandoned you or your mom or whatever. You talk that kind of shit, and your kid is alienated from you and starts showing symptoms of that. The results of that are similar to consistent physical abuse or sexual abuse done to a kid. And we as a culture don't see that. Like, we think it's okay. We think that if you shit talk a dad, or if a dad gets disenfranchised in some way, it's okay. And there's no way of building men up. And even men who enter into the system and don't know what they're doing, they go to their first court appearance or hearing or some sort of mediation, and something gets put on paper and they fuck themselves financially or with visitation, they start off screwed. So they may eventually get custody, visitation, these types of things, but they're so disenfranchised because, I mean, look, man, average average custody case, guess depends on what state you're in, but 20 grand. Who has that right now? Like, who has 20 grand to spend right now, what you need to pay your lawyer for?
So I heard it's better to go to court by yourself rather than bring a family lawyer into it at the very beginning? Or what do you think? This
is a debatable thing, and I would say fuck no. So you need to, so here's the thing. You can represent yourself. You absolutely can. Like, it's not an either or. But you have to understand that most people who represent themselves screw up in the beginning, and the beginning is the most important thing to not screw up. Because once a judge makes a ruling, anything gets signed, then to reverse that, you're not then fighting for custody. You're fighting to reverse what got ruled, to get custody back. So you're not on an even playing field. And the real question here, or the real thing to understand, is how do you find a good lawyer? How do you know if you need a lawyer? How do you know how to look for a good lawyer? How do you interview lawyers? Lawyers are traditionally bad people. Like, they're greedy, to, don't give a shit about your well-being, your kid, or anything like that. But the thing is if you need him, you need him. And you need to understand how the law works. It is so hard to comprehend, and how if one thing goes wrong, like, here's the thing, man, you're going to go in front of the judge. It's 15 minutes. You don't get to talk much. That means she gets to talk, the judge gets to talk, and you get to talk. And whoever filed first generally gets to talk first. If she makes the claim to the attorney general on custody first, she's going to talk first, and then maybe she lies. And you go, man, that's a lie. You're now speaking out of turn in a courtroom, and a judge is going to see 20 of these cases all day of people who disrespected their court by not being prepared. And they're just going to say, well, look, I'm going to err on the side of caution. You guys are still arguing. Figure it out. Here it is. I'm signing it. And then the guy's like, man, I'm fucked. Whereas if you get some education on this, like, here's the easy thing, right? Okay, lawyer or no lawyer, here's what you got to do. You have to look at the laws in your state and county that determine custody, okay? So what is going to what is custody going to be awarded at? Is it standard visitation, which is like a weekend dad thing? Is it expanded standard? That's weekends plus and then extra holidays and stuff like that. Is it 50-50? Do judges rule on that? So that's the first thing. You have to look at how that is, like who's taking the kids to school, who's making food, who's doing all this sort of stuff. You have to look at how the judge is going to see that. If it's just that my kids like me more, that doesn't count. It's who is caring for the child. And if the child is a newborn, it's going to be with the mother in most states, just because of, whatever different theories around
maternal
it.
Stuff. Yeah.
It's seen as important, but after 18 months, 2 years, it can be split up. But then the next thing is you should interview attorneys. Like, why not? Interview attorneys to go like, hey, I'm assigned to this judge. Like, so when you get served on this, it's going to say what court you're going to be in. You go to whatever attorneys are in that county and you say, hey, what do you know about this? Here's my information. Here's my statistics. It's better if you go in there organized, which is a lot easier than you think, but it's also mind numbing. It's kind of like, here's how you meet women, da 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 da. But then like guys are like, yeah, but what if I do this? And they're kind of sidetracking themselves on something that isn't necessarily correct. You have to rewind that. But if you start to look at like, okay, here's the money I make. So custody is all going to be about child support, visitation, and it's going to be like, who is the better parent? How does that judge, how does that court look at what the best interest of the child is? Because that's what it is. We have our definition of the best interest of the child, but it has to be for that judge. And then you can do the next best thing. So the third thing that you need to do is you need to go in and watch that judge. Most family courts, I said all in some video, and the guy corrected me, like in Virginia or Vermont, they're not open to the public, but you can go and watch that judge. And if you watch anywhere from 10 to 15 cases, you're going to see dads fuck up. You're going to see moms fuck up. You're going to see dads win. You're going to see moms win. And then you start to look at strategy, And so this is like a kind of a tricky thing, because us as men, the things that naturally make us strong are to confront, fight, tell the truth, fight for our kids, show up, clear up whatever. She said this, no, this didn't happen. But that's all going to work against you in the court.
Damn.
So we actually have to have some sort of clarity on what we say. So it's best to go in and watch a judge. Watch your judge. And then you get the information, and then you go, man, I'm nervous, and da-da-da-da.
How long do you typically have between the time you're served to your first court appearance where you can actually take that time period to go watch that judge typically?
Yeah,
a couple months?
Yeah. You got anywhere from like 2 weeks, which is very fast, but with COVID, it backed everything up.
Yeah.
But it could be 6 months. And so think about this. If you screw up and a ruling goes wrong, and she gets more visitation than you, or we could talk about protective orders and stuff like that, because that's where it all goes out the window. You're totally fucked. But let's say a ruling gets made, and then you want to contest that. You want to go back to court. You file a motion for that. It's like, how do you do that? How do you do that yourself? What if I screw it up? If I screw it up, it goes to the court, and they say he screwed up. He's got to refile again. When do you find out that news? 2-3 weeks down the road? But then once it gets accepted, it might be 3 months. So if you screw up, you have 3 months of a status quo happening, meaning if she gets more custody and she's taking the kids to school and the dad is cut out for some sort of safety reason and it has to go to supervised visitation, which generally men have to pay for. You have to pay for your own supervision for watching your own kids. And
what the hell?
Child support gets set at something which is unrealistic. Then you have 3 months of her getting to do whatever she wants. The next time you go back to the court, she's going to say, if she's smart, if she wants to win this game, which a lot of times that doesn't happen, she's going to say, well, look, the kids are used to it. It would traumatize them to reintegrate the father to be a 50-50 situation. So you want to get it right from the beginning. And the other thing that happens is all sorts of false claims, false allegations. They're like, man, I mean,
Dime a dozen.
It's the worst, man.
Did you see the young Jeezy and Jenny Mai situation?
No.
Where, so basically there's a rapper called Jeezy, aka Snowman, and he married this Asian girl that this talk show, Jenny Mai, and they were together for a couple of years. Apparently he cheated, she cheated, something like that, but they were basically breaking up. And they were in love, they were all together all the time, but now all of a sudden she wants kids for herself. She's saying he's a bad dad and he has guns in the house for protection, but all of a sudden now they're bad because she doesn't like him anymore. So before it's for their protection, the kids, her, but now because he has guns in the house, she's using that against him.